Shave your head and listen to more rap music. This is advice for Sam Bankman-Fried, as he may or may not be heading to prison. The advice is coming from Martin Shkreli, who was convicted of financial crimes, served some time in prison, and has some very particular advice for Sam. And if you guys have advice for Sam too, I'd love to write in the comments and share what it is. But listen to Martin's advice. He says, my advice for him includes shaving his head. My advice for him includes deepening his voice. Sam is going to have a lot of issues because he's a bit of an effeminate guy, and his demeanor, some people say autistic sort of sensibility, is not something that goes over well in prison. Here's some more advice. He probably should no longer say that he's from Stanford or something. He should say he's from Oakland. I think people would rather hear him lie than hear the truth. Even if they know it's a bit of a lie, he should probably start to reinvent his background and history, because the rich white kid from a good neighborhood, that story doesn't sound great. And it's interesting because, I hadn't really thought about these things as advices for Sam, but it certainly makes sense, as it certainly looks bad for him, as, two of his colleagues over at FTX have pleaded guilty. You guys know this. Martin has more advice for Sam here as well. He's also saying here, prison essentially is a very testosterone-filled and masculine place. The reason why he is advising Sam to listen to rap music and this kind of things is that essentially Sam needs to learn prison culture, gang culture, this sort of thing. Here's a direct quote. He also doesn't know anything about the streets and criminal culture. My advice is to pick up on these things as quickly as possible. He's to start listening to as much rap music as possible. He should be trying everything there is to know about gangs. So, I'd be curious. Oh, and then the last part is, this sounds funny, but it could save your life. And I'd be curious if you guys agree or disagree with this advice. It actually doesn't sound bad, right? Deepen your voice, shave your head, listen to rap music, learn about gang and criminal culture. These kind of things, I'm trying to scare you guys, but this is real. This is actually real advice that you're giving someone. Because I don't think if you have a choice that you want to serve time. I'm sure you guys understand this. But if you do, this is the advice that Martin has. Also, too, Sam has certainly been rumored to be worried about his personal safety. This is an article that I just saw just now. It says, Sam Bankman-Fried's family pays $10,000 a week for armed security. So I can't confirm this, but it doesn't sound unbelievable, right? I could certainly see this be a thing. And that's actually quite a bit of money, $10,000 a week for security. So, my understanding too is the trial may be like a year away, something like that. But we'll see. We're going to keep track on this thing. The thing is that you're talking about so much money, right? There's like still a missing $8 billion somewhere. 10,000 a week isn't a crazy amount considering that how much money that is involved with this. I saw this other report too that, they're saying that Sam Bankman-Fried might have, used $546 million from Alameda to buy, it was like 70%, sorry, not 70, 7% of Robinhood. So, we're talking about a lot of money. And the other thing too is people are very, very careful about their ties to this thing. Like, for example, the judge that was initially on the case had to recuse herself because her husband's law firm, although her husband didn't directly do any sort of dealings with FTX, her husband's law firm was part of someone who did deals with FTX, right? So, and deals in terms of like writing contracts, that kind of thing. But I think one of the things that FTX is going to be exposed, I guess you could say, is that a lot of people were involved with this. A lot of people took money. Both Democrats and Republicans took money. We can talk about politics. You're also talking about Sam was buying off a lot of former government officials. And in fact, it's interesting because this was one of the top stories that caught my eye months ago. I was making videos about this, and I'll repeat, I was making videos of this stuff months ago. I knew that Sam was buying off former regulators. Why? Because it was actually all reported, just people seem to look the other way in terms of like whether or not it was important, right? So it was all reported. That's how I knew about these things. And in fact, this is an article that's saying, oh, well, now it's important. Now we should look at it. Like, for example, we'll read through here. Many of Bankman-Fried's top deputies were former regulators, right? Ryan Miller's FTX general counsel previously served as legal counsel to Gary Gensler, the then CFTC chairman, who is now chairman of the SEC. This is a CFTC, if you don't know, it's Commodities and Futures Trading Commission. Mark Wetjen, which is FTX former head of policy. This person used to also, he was the acting chairman and commissioner at the CFTC, and another person, Jill Sumners, another CFTC commissioner, also served at FTX, a derivative board of directors. So what was going on months ago that I was making videos about, and I was telling you guys about this from following the channel for a long time, is that Sam Bankman-Fried was buying former regulators to make it that retail investors could essentially buy futures contracts on crypto with leverage. Like basically the most risky thing you can do in the most risky way you can do it on the most risky asset. And he was essentially buying the regulators to allow that to happen. You can see here, all these people were there. And the other thing that I had pointed out as well, this is again, months ago I was talking about this stuff, is that the CFTC was underfunded. So, come in with the big money like Sam and you can start basically writing your own rules. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on with the FTX. I know it's been a holiday, but I'm just catching you up on the latest news. This is something that, people are kind of wondering, okay, we heard about these hacks as FTX was slowing down, what's going on with that? Some people have wondered if it's been an insider job that they were hacking the money from FTX. Evidently, my understanding of it is interesting. I was looking at this, is that the money was taken from the FTX token, transferred in to an Ethereum or a Bitcoin, and then sometimes they refer to this sort of another transfer again to they call it a mixer, and then a mixer is essentially into a crypto account that has all kinds of cryptocurrencies in order to try to hide the trail. My understanding, if you're into crypto, which I'm totally not a crypto bro by any stretch, would be like Ethereum or Bitcoin are your two main ones. And then it seems like the reason why essentially nefarious people would want to do other cryptos is mostly just to hide the trail. So I thought that was kind of an interesting point. They referred to as like I said, like a mixer account. So if you guys have any thoughts on that, that's just what's going on. Other ways to hide the money as well is I guess FTX had a bunch of different shell companies. Or just connections, how you want to say it. This article was saying they have 130 different companies out there or something that they're doing business with. And one of these was called North Dimension. And the basic idea is that you would wire money to this company that looks like a company that sells cell phones or something like that. But that's how one way that investors would get money to Alameda, so that it didn't look like you were directly sending money to Alameda. So it's all pretty shady. This website is now taken down, but I think we're going to hear a lot more of these kind of things pop up. In regards to other news, Tesla is at its worst month, worst quarter, and worst year in history. I've been warning you guys about Tesla for a long time as well. It's kind of funny. It's the same thing, as Bitcoin goes up and FTX is all the rage and all the celebrities and all the scammy YouTubers are telling you all about FTX, then when I tell people that it's no good, then people call me stupid, right? The same way that if I tell you all that it looks like Tesla's way overvalued, Elon Musk is going to fail at Twitter, all these kind of things. And sometimes for some people, it's not what they want to hear, so they just think I'm stupid. But it turns out I was right about a lot of things this year, but it is what it is. But Tesla's really, really struggling. Last I checked, I was looking at today, it was down 70-some%. And it's funny, I noticed a lot of YouTubers are now making videos about Tesla going down, which is too late, right? You generally, when you want to make videos, you want to do it a year in advance or a year and a half in advance, whatever. But if you're too early, like myself, people don't believe you because they don't see it yet. And now that they see it, it is what it is. So it was obvious when you had the CEO of a major company tweeting out about Dogecoin and stuff like that. It's so ridiculous. Another sort of trend, which is really interesting that I predicted and actually made a video about it, you guys can watch it, is the further automation of companies, be it restaurants, as in this example. There was an interesting article about this, and essentially what they were saying here is that some of the bigger chains are getting into, getting robots to take over some of the work. So Chipotle, they're experimenting with robots making tortilla chips. Sweetgreen, they're experimenting with robots to make salads. And then Starbucks is also experimenting as well. So I think this is going to be something that's going to happen. I mentioned to you guys before, as we head into recession, if you want to ensure that you're going to have a job, be the person who designs these robots. Be the person who repairs these robots, right? Don't try to fight that robots are going to replace you. Be the person who is control of the robots, essentially, is what I'm saying. Other news, home prices continue to come down. As we know that as interest rates go up, right, it affects the whole economy. So one is house sales are also slowing and home prices are coming down. We know that the chip companies are struggling. Keep getting reports of just basically consumers aren't buying as much stuff, right? And the basic gist of it is how I always explain it to you is that during the pandemic, everybody bought all of their TVs essentially that they were going to buy. And then the pandemic's over and they quit buying all those TVs and now they don't have jobs. That's essentially kind of what we're going into. And it's interesting because, this sort of situation is pretty easily to predict, but people just, like I said, I don't know. I guess the theme of today's story is that some people just don't want to believe what's going on. But who knows? It is what it is. Other world news. I'm in Korea, as you guys know. Evidently, the North Koreans were launching a bunch of drones at us. It was like 5 of them flew into South Korean airspace, or we like to just say just Korea, essentially. But they flew into our airspace, and then the Koreans launched and scrambled drones and jets to essentially do this. But one thing that's kind of concerning is that this may or may not escalate. I was looking at this chart here, and this is kind of an interesting one. This shows sort of like how many either missiles or other things, like say drones, that North Korea has launched. You can see 2022, there is a big spike, right? Short range ballistic missiles, medium range ballistic missiles, you have intermediate range ballistic missiles, intercontinental ballistic missiles, and other, which would be like your drones or whatever. But there's clearly a spike in activity on this. And, whether or not they're having, private talks with Russia and China to sort of coordinate this kind of stuff is anyone's guess. It's private, so who knows? But there have been reports that North Korea has been shipping weapons to Russia. I've seen those reports. So I wouldn't be shocked if they're in cahoots with Russia or something like that. And sort of the rift between China and the U.S. it has to do over, who's buying Russian oil. And because if you look at this chart here, you can see that both China and India are still essentially importing oil from Russia. I think there might be a couple other countries on that list as well. But we're, going to be concerned about this for years to come. It's not like energy need is going to disappear anytime soon. And unfortunately, in the USA, we've had some crazy attacks on the energy grid. You guys have probably seen this. This is in Washington State. So before we saw reports of attacks on the energy grid in North Carolina. Now it's like Oregon and Washington. So there was like a couple attacks in North Carolina, a couple in Oregon, and like 4 in Washington, and then people are without power. So I hope we don't have to start putting security at the power stations, but it's just a crazy time right now. I mean, the temperatures are going down, so obviously you need energy. I keep reading reports of people out of power. There was another crazy report. It was in Buffalo, New York, where they actually had to call in the military to keep people off the roads, essentially, because too many people were ignoring the safety issues and just driving out to wherever they wanted to go. It's actually a real problem in Buffalo. So if anyone's in Buffalo or in the upstate New York or even Canada, please chime in. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts, but it sounds like it's really, really bad up there. Some of the companies, airlines essentially have been hit really hard. Southwest Airlines had to cancel a whole bunch of flights, and people essentially spending, their Christmas at the airport kind of thing. I've never had that happen to me. I always recommend if you're going to do this kind of stuff, try to fly, a week ahead of time or a week after. But I certainly understand for some people, just their schedule didn't allow them to leave earlier or stay longer, that kind of thing, to avoid the mess. So unfortunately, people were doing that. Other people were doing other crazy things to fight the snow. True story. If you ever wanted to know if a flamethrower can clear all the snow, there's some people out there who are trying to get popular on social media to prove what the snow would do. There's a dude in Kentucky, I can show you a picture here, but he was using flamethrowers to clear his driveway. I think it's more for funny than anything, because to be perfectly frank, it is a huge waste of fuel. But yes, if you really want to use a flamethrower to clear your driveway, you certainly can do that. However, I will say, do be careful. The cops may get called on you by the neighbors. There was a funny story here where someone put out a mannequin, kind of like the Christmas Vacation movie, if you guys know. And in that movie, there's like the brother-in-law comes and he's like doing all this crazy stuff outside all the time in his bathrobe, and someone actually put a mannequin out there that looked just like it. And the neighbor thought this was a real person out there drinking a beer, with a lawn hose, and called the police. So do be careful. Anyway, this has been the Daily News. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on this thing. Do you agree with the advice that was given to Sam Bankman-Fried to shave his head and listen to rap music? And do you have any other advice for Sam as he prepares, who may or may not go to prison because he's not convicted yet, just sort of the rumors or the sentiment, I guess I should say. Thanks again for watching one, and I'll catch you in the next video.